And welcome, sports fans, to today's Sports Roundtable. Glad you joined us for today, as it's been quite a week with all the winter weather that moved in last weekend or the beginning of the week. Not much action's taking place, or as much action's taking place. Quite a bit's happened over the last couple of days. Finally, I know it's been rough on the coaches and teams out there, just not been able to get stay in the normal routine, especially with the school week, as well as trying to get those daily practices in. And it's been certainly a struggle, but it looks like we're going to get past that by this week. Next week will be certainly a better week, and pretty much all the icy, snowy conditions will pass from this weekend. So did have quite a few games this week. We had 4 initial games scheduled to broadcast this week. We only got 3, but it was 3 straight, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, so a pretty busy schedule for us the last few days. But finally getting back to some action here the latter part of this last week, and we saw quite a bit happen. Quite a few storylines out there from the last few nights, which we'll get to in a moment. But surely getting to the very interesting part of the year. We're heading into probably the last third of the season. Coming up over the next month, we're getting into some conference tournament action, which we'll cover, and we're going to be getting into some conference tournaments this next week, over the next few weeks, actually. So very interesting time, as a lot of regular seasons conference play underway. Going to be getting into those tournaments over the next few weeks. So very exciting part of the season as we enter to the last of January into February. That means in February, district time is going to be rolling around in the mid part of next month. So very interesting part of the season for sure, as we're starting to see what teams are pretty much coming up with this part of the year and heading into district play, how these district tournaments are going to typically look like across the area in high school basketball. So be looking forward to that for the remainder of the year. And let's go ahead and take a look at some of the action that took place last night. Pretty busy night in the area, getting back to high school basketball. And take a look at the game we brought to you live last night from the Bearcat Event Center. It was Dexter over New Madrid County Central in this CMO Conference matchup, 72-48. Decisive victory for the Dexter Bearcats. They had a back-to-back Thursday and Friday night. Bernie Thursday, New Madrid the last night. New Madrid having a tough week. Didn't have school all week and only had 1 day of practice. I think it was Thursday coming into the game. So certainly not the ideal conditions for the Eagles and their weekly routine. But it surely showed last night. They were just really out of sync, especially offensively. Couldn't get anything going with the offense, and just couldn't keep pace with the Bearcats, who really came out and played aggressively, got to play up-tempo basketball, and really had a nice night at the Bearcat Event Center. And let's go ahead and take a look at some of those highlights from last night from the Bearcat Event Center. And take a look here. New Madrid got off to a pretty good start. Donnie Brown, freshman, coming up with a few shots there, getting the Eagles started. Nice drive by Thalen Marsh. Finish at the rim. Pretty close game after 1 quarter. There, a nice dump-down pass, lob pass to Gabe Jackson with the score. There, Donnie Brown facing up again. Nice knocking down that jumper there. And here, Ben Sindel knocking down a 3 on the right side. Here, Clay Mullins at the end of the first quarter, just inside of half court, knocks it down. Heading into the second quarter here, Ben Sindel knocking down another 3 on the right wing. And Clay Mullins, he had a great night going to the basket, gets a nice finish there. And here, Mullins again. Tough finish at the basket. I think he had 27 on the night. And here, a 3-pointer on the right side, good for the Eagles. And towards the end of the first half, Mullins, a nice tough finish there at the basket. And Ben Sindel knocking down another 3. He had a nice night shooting for the Bearcats. And here, Dawson Casting hitting a shot right at the buzzer at the first half. Donnie Brown trying to get the Eagles back going in the second half here, and got a couple shots. He's really got that nice mid-range jumper, especially as a freshman. Here, Clay Mullins on the drive. Nice dish off for the basket. And Mullins going back to work here on the drive. Nice little runner and the foul. And Pippins knocking down a 3 at the top of the key. A really nice night shooting from the 3-point line from the Bearcats. And here, Mullins, a nice drive and finish. Basket and the foul again. And here, nice drive to the basket. But here in the fourth quarter, all the Dexter Bearcats as Gabe Jackson took that lob pass for the finish. And a really nice night for the Bearcats. They really showed up, played well, even though it was a back-to-back. Had a little slower tempo game. I wouldn't say slower tempo, but lower scoring game Thursday night with Bernie. More high scoring. Got to play out in the open court a little bit more. Clay Mullins had a big night. Didn't have as much a big night Thursday night due to pretty much the defensive scheme Bernie had. Played more of a zone set and more of a man-to-man set from the Madrid Eagles last night. And that's when Dexter's at their best, when Mullins can really mix it up off the dribble, drive into the paint. He can dish it off, and he can really finish at the basket well. So Clay Mullins having a big night, and we'll talk more about his night a little later. But impressive victory for the Bearcats Friday night over New Madrid. And take a look at other games in the area. Big game down in the Boot Hill Conference last night. Malden over Portageville, 62-53. Impressive victory for the Malden Green Wave. Had a little stumble a couple weeks ago with South Pemiscot at home. Took that conference loss to South Pemiscot, but very impressive victory over Portageville last night. Portageville going to be right up there at the top of that Boot Hill Conference in that tournament in a couple weeks. And might see those two in the championship game. You never know. It might come down to those two, and Malden getting a nice victory. Looks like they're back on their winning stride as they've had a great year so far. An impressive victory over the Portageville Bulldogs last night. I think that was down in Portageville as well. So, great matchup there. Wouldn't be surprised if we see them in that tournament here in a couple weeks in Portageville. That Boot Hill Conference tournament's in Portageville this year, so something to look at there. And also from last night, Charleston, I believe they're playing over in the Superman Classic. I don't know if that is the Superman Classic or not. I didn't get that specific. But Graves County, Kentucky, very good basketball program. If you're familiar with anything over in Kentucky, one of the best programs over in Western Kentucky, Graves County. And Charleston took an overtime loss to Graves County, 73-71. So Charleston taking out a state loss there in the tournament. And a very impressive program over there in Graves County, certainly. So Charleston, I think they're going to be playing the third place game of that tournament. I believe this was the semifinals, I do believe. So we'll see what happens there. But I think it's the Superman Classic. I think that's what they typically play in over there in Metropolis, Illinois. And in other games, Woodland over Bloomfield in a close one, 61-60. A nice win for the Woodland Cardinals, as they get the conference win over the Bloomfield Wildcats. That tournament's already seeded and set for this next week, but still a nice win for the Woodland Cardinals. Probably a little bit of an upset there, I would say. Bloomfield playing, good at times, a young team this year for sure. And Woodland got a nice conference victory there over Bloomfield last night. Also, Sikeston over Father Tolton, 79-55. Nice victory for the Sikeston Bulldogs. They set this up a few years back, this kind of home and home with Father Tolton Catholic, when Michael Porter Jr. was there, and then he transferred up to Washington State, and it just hasn't really lived up since they scheduled this series. But Sikeston getting a nice road victory last night. 24-point victory, and big news from Fred Thatch, scoring over 2,000 points in his career. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but a nice win for the Sikeston Bulldogs last night. And Risco over Holcomb in the Tri-County Conference, 79-59. The Risco Tigers have an impressive season, getting into their conference schedule now, which they're going to be favored in that conference tournament in a few weeks. And a nice victory over the Holcomb Hornets last night. Down in Holcomb. And also Bernie over Puxico, Stoddard County Conference game, 81-50, no problem for the Bernie Mules, taking a tough loss Thursday night to Dexter. Really nice rebound game for the Mules last night on their homecoming last night, and getting a 31-point victory over the Puxico Indians. So look out for the Bernie Mules. They're starting to get some of their players back. Weston Zoll been out for much of the year. I believe he just maybe played a week or two at the first of the year, and out most of the year. He came back in the Dexter game Thursday night, and sure, he was back in that game Friday night. So adding another piece to that roster. They certainly need. They've had some injuries this year. Certainly Dalton Hobgood out for the year from the beginning. Hunter Slaving's been out for a few games there in the mid part of the year. And Weston Zoll had a more extended absence from the team, so it looks like he's back in the mix. So certainly need all those guys ready to go for the last month of the season coming up. And also we've got Notre Dame over Saxony Lutheran, 84-65. Notre Dame getting a victory over Saxony Lutheran. We had Saxony Lutheran against Kennett Wednesday night. We'll touch on that highlight here momentarily, but Notre Dame not looking bad this year. They've kind of been right there in the mix. They haven't really just totally wowed anybody with big victories, but certainly going to be at top of that SEMO conference by the end of the year. So a team to look out for with the Notre Dame Bulldogs. Neelyville over Twin Rivers over the Ozark Foothills Conference, 55-48. Impressive victory for Neelyville. Twin Rivers, one of those teams that's looked really good since the turn of the year, especially from the Bloomfield Christmas Tournament. They really came on strong and have been playing pretty well for 2018 so far. So pretty good victory for the Neelyville Tigers last night over Twin Rivers. We already had Risk over Holcomb. South Pemiscot over Zenith Hornersville down the Boot Hill Conference, 89-52. South Pemiscot's had a great 2018. They've gotten started with a great start. Went over Malden. I think they had another victory over Crothersville. Crothersville a little down this year. A couple injuries really hurt them for this season, but still certainly formidable in the Boot Hill Conference. South Pemiscot got a victory over Crothersville as well. Another victory over Zenith Hornersville. So South Pemiscot looking really good. Going to look good. Probably have a pretty strong seed in that Boot Hill Conference tournament coming up in a couple weeks. So we'll see what happens. But South Pemiscot probably one of the more surprising teams to start this new year, certainly here in southeast Missouri. And Advance over Meadow Heights, 76-57. Advance took a loss a couple nights ago to Notre Dame. I think a 16-point loss. Answered back with a nice win over Meadow Heights. Meadow Heights, one of those teams that's really stepped up their game this year. So certainly an improved team there in Meadow Heights. Advance with the victory over them last night. And in the Scott Mississippi Conference Tournament, this is in the semifinals. Oran, the top seed, defeated Scott County Central 77-60. Oran with a nice win over Scott County Central. Going to be a competitive conference there. Chaffee took a loss to. Let's go ahead and go to the next game. Chaffee did take a loss to Kelly in the first round. Second-seeded Chaffee lost to seventh-seeded Kelly. That matches up the semifinal game where East Prairie, the third seed, defeated Kelly 78-47. So that will set up East Prairie and Oran in that Scott Mississippi Conference Championship. I assume that'll be taking place tonight. And going to be an impressive game there. East Prairie's already defeated Oran. That was about maybe 2-3 weeks back, possibly. I think 2 weeks back. East Prairie defeated Oran. Big, went down to the very end. So going to have a rematch for that Scott Mississippi Conference title game later on tonight. So that'll be a fun one to look forward to between East Prairie and Oran. And in other games, Cape Central over Doniphan, 69-39. Cape Central getting a nice win over the Doniphan Dons. And that's the team to look out for this year. They've been in the state rankings. We're going to get to those a little later. But that Cape Central team, they're in Class 4, also in the SEMO Conference. Team to look out for. They were very good last year, even defeated Sikeston last year in the regular season. Come up short in the district to Sikeston in the rematch. But it looks like they're strong once again this year. I think their only loss is to Sikeston in that SEMO Conference tournament earlier in the year. So looking really good, the Cape Central Tigers, this part of the year. And Jackson over Miller Career Academy, 75-63. Also in girls basketball from last night, the Boot Hill Conference, Malden defeated Portageville with a shot at the buzzer to give the Malden Lady Green Wave Boot Hill Conference victory over Portageville, 53-52. Other girls game, that was the only girls game really to report on from the area last night. So there's the games from last night in the area. And if you want to catch some replays of the games that we had the last few nights, New Madrid County Central versus Dexter, you can catch that replay from Friday night. You can catch that here on YHC today at noon and 6:30. Also Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. throughout the weekend here on YHC. If you want to go watch it on our website, it's already available there to watch on our website at yhctv.com. And a pretty nice matchup there in the CMO Conference from last night, as Dexter got that victory. Also, if you want to watch that Thursday night broadcast, we have Bernie and Dexter, big Stoddard County rivalry we had in the Dexter High School Gymnasium for a throwback game that will replay today at 1:30 following that New Madrid-Dexter game. You also catch it Sunday afternoon at 4:30. You can also watch that online at yhctv.com as well. So those are the broadcasts you can catch over the weekend here on YHC. And we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to take a look at some other highlights we had from earlier in the week, Saxony Lutheran-Kennett, and also Bernie and Dexter from earlier this week. So we'll be back with that coming up. Welcome back, and now we're going to take a look at some previous games this week. It's three straight days worth of games, Wednesday through Friday, and now taking a look at the broadcast from Thursday night. Bernie and Dexter, always a big treat each year that we bring to you here on YHC, and we had more of the typical Bernie-Dexter rivalry game. The last few years, it hasn't quite lived up. Bernie, a very young team the last couple of years, but really got a nice senior class this year with some upperclassmen to go along with that roster, and a much more competitive game Thursday night out at the Dexter High School Gymnasium, and what they call their throwback game. Each year they're having a game over in the Dexter High School Gymnasium coupled with a chili supper fundraiser, which really works out well. A great turnout for the game Thursday night. And take a look at that game Thursday here. And a nice elbow jumper to get the Bernie Mules started from Josh Ellenberg. And here, nice high-low action with Clay Mullins getting the finish. And here, a nice dump-down pass. Finish for the Mules. Here, Gabe Jackson getting a nice finish there in the paint for the Bearcats. Nice three-pointer along the right side. I believe that was Weston Zoll with that three. And Nate Gargas getting a nice turnover there at midcourt. Finished it off for the layup, and follows it up with a nice elbow jumper for the Bearcats. And here, Josh Ellenberg, nice drive to the basket and the foul. And here, Weston Zoll getting a nice baseline jumper for the Mules. And three-pointer, Alan Pippins knocking one down on the right wing. And Hunter Slavings cutting the defense there, basket and the foul for Slavings. And nice pass here up from Clay Mullins, easy two for the Bearcats. And Dawson Casting getting his own rebound, puts it back in for basket and the foul. And here at the end of the third quarter, Gabe Jackson put it in right at the buzzer. And to start the fourth, Blake Hardy has a couple buckets here. Nice step back jumper. And three-pointer in the corner, Alan Pippins knocking it down. And Josh Ellenberg steps into a three on the right side, knocks that down. And three-pointer again, Pippins knocking one down in the right corner. And here, a nice drive and finish at the basket. Chance at the three-point play there. And nice cut to the basket. I believe that was Rogers on that cut. And the Dexter Bearcats getting that victory Thursday night over the Bernie Mules. I believe that was an 11-point victory. I think it was 55-44 or 65-55. 54. One of those two. It was an 11-point victory for the Dexter Bearcats over the Bernie Mules, and certainly a competitive game. And it was the fourth quarter that was really the difference. Dexter forcing turnovers. Bernie just couldn't really get into their offense and get back into that game late in the fourth. And Dexter converted those turnovers into points, and the three-point shot come alive. Certainly in that fourth quarter, Alan Pippin's hitting quite a few of those there in the end to seal that victory for the Bearcats. So a great atmosphere Thursday night over at the high school gym, and the Bernie crowd certainly came out with a good crowd as well. Certainly made it a great atmosphere. The high school gymnasium, I think back going to quite a few games over the years before the Bearcat Event Center came about, and always a great atmosphere it was there in the high school gymnasium, and pretty much brought that back. Was certainly the goal, a throwback game to have each year there at the high school gymnasium in Dexter. So very competitive game, and the conference tournament going to be coming up next week. Both those teams going to be in the mix for that conference tournament title being held in Dexter next week. And let's take a look at our Wednesday broadcast. We were down in Kennett Wednesday night for Saxony Lutheran and Kennett. That was supposed to be Tuesday night, moved it up to Wednesday, or back to Wednesday. So take a look at that game from Wednesday night. As Robinson, big 6'8" guy for the Saxony Lutheran Crusaders, got that put back to get the Crusaders started, and we see here Jalen Williams had 7 3-pointers on the game. That was one of his 7, knocking that down. Jackson Hempfling came on strong for the Indians last night, knocking down that 3. Had quite a few 3s in the game. Jalen Williams knocking another one down on the left side. And here, Patrick Maddox banking one in at the end of the first quarter from half court. Impressive shot there from Maddox here. Nice alley-oop there to Williams with the finish. And Williams getting another 3 in the left corner, knocking that one down. And Jackson Hempfling stepping inside the 3, knocking down another jumper. And Williams knocking down a deep 3 on this one at the end of the first half, knocking that down. Here, Robinson getting started in the second. Nice little fadeaway jumper there in the paint. And Maddox knocking down knocking down the baseline jumper there. Maddox getting a nice rebound off the missed free throw, putting it back in at the end of the third quarter. Now into the fourth. Kobe Gates knocking down that jumper inside the 3. And nice little jumper there inside from Jalen Williams. And Maddox knocking it off the defender off the inbound for the easy 2. Now Maddox with a nice assist ahead with the finish for the Indians. And Williams really made it interesting, though, in the fourth quarter. Knocking down a 3 there. He's going to knock it down another one here on the right side just with 4 minutes to go. And now he's going to knock it down another one just about 30 seconds later. Had 3 3-pointers there in the fourth quarter. But the Indians start to run away with it here. A nice finish there. And got the, I believe it was a 4-point victory for the Kennett Indians over Saxony Lutheran Wednesday night. So very competitive games we had this week, and that was a big victory for Kennett. They've had a tough year, got a very young team with the exception of Patrick Maddox, really no varsity experience, starting experience at least. I think they only returned 1 starter from last year in Patrick Maddox. And it's a very young team this year. Got some freshmen and sophomores having to play a lot of minutes this year, but that's good, valuable experience for those young Indians. But very good, very impressive victory for the Kennett Indians there Wednesday night over Saxony Lutheran. Went into the game 15-3 and had a nice night defeating Saxony Lutheran in that game Wednesday night. And taking a look at some storylines from last night, we're going to get to very impressive feat from Sikeston's Fred Thatch. He passed the 2,000-point mark last night against Father Tolton Catholic, and also set the career scoring record for Sikeston as he passed Michael Porter. Michael Porter setting that record back in 2009, and Michael Porter having a great 4-year career there at Sikeston, much like Fred Thatch has. Fred Thatch has been a 4-year starter for the Bulldogs. Michael Porter had a great run as well. I think he was at least a 3-year starter, might even started as a freshman as well for the Bulldogs. And Fred Thatch scoring over 2,000 points, and that is a great feat, especially at the Class 4 level, CMO Conference level, scoring 2,000 points. Very impressive. Very rare do you see players there in Class 4 and Class 5 start all 4 years as from a freshman all the way to a senior. It's very rare. You see quite a few sophomores come into the mix, but very rare to see freshmen start at either the Class 4, Class 5, or either the SEMO conference level in high school basketball. So very impressive career for Fred Thatch. He's committed to St. Louis University to play for the Billikens next year. I think he committed that last year. So he's had a great career, trying to wrap it up this year, certainly with a state title run once again this year. So he's been one of the fine treats of high school basketball over the last 4 years here in southeast Missouri. And don't see very many like him come along. So we'll be looking forward to seeing what he can put together for the remainder of his senior year. Probably not quite the senior year he would like. He's been nagging with an injury this year. I think he was out 2 to 3 weeks, maybe even longer than that. But he's back in the mix. Hopefully he can finish strong for the Bulldogs, as they've had one of the best teams they've ever had in that school's history, and that says a lot. They've got a deep roster, played about 10 kids, so we'll see what happens. But Sikeston's Fred Thatch, impressive feat last night, crossing 2,000 points for his career. And also another little milestone, Dexter's Clay Mullins passes the 1,000-point mark for the Dexter Bearcats last night, although not all those points with the Bearcats. I think he was a transfer from East Carter County last year, come into Dexter last year, and he's been quite the addition to that Dexter program over the last 2 years. A very aggressive dribbler, which that really makes the Dexter Bearcats certainly dangerous offensively with his dribble, strong dribble into the paint, able to finish really nice at the rim, got a little mid-range jumper as well, and Dexter certainly enjoyed having him along on their team the last few years, especially this year. He's really stepped up his game this year, had a big night last night against New Madrid, and certainly one of the better guards in the SEMO Conference and the Stoddard County Conference, and Clay Mullins. So congratulations to Clay Mullins, passing 1,000 points in his career last night. And also a big scoring night. A couple of nights ago, Thursday night, Poplar Bluff's Kiley Bess scored 50 points against Sikeston in that overtime victory for the Poplar Bluff Mules, Lady Mules. And Kiley Bess, of course, the granddaughter of legendary college basketball coach Gene Bess and the daughter of Brian Bess. Been the assistant there for Three Rivers for a number of years, and quite a talent he was as well at the high school level, and Brian Bess, and into college as well. And Kiley Bess scored 50 points. Very impressive. You don't see that very often, especially at the girls level. 50 points in a game. Very impressive. So look out for Kiley Bess going forward. She might have another couple of those nights in store for the remainder of the season. 50 points. Very impressive. And let's move on and take a look at the broadcast we've got coming up this week. Got another busy week ahead, and Monday night we're going to be down in Portageville, Clarkton and Portageville. We're going to have that for you Monday night from Portageville. We'll bring that live to you right here on YHC. It'll be a 7:30 start from the Portageville Gymnasium, so look forward to that one. Then Tuesday night we'll be down in Kennett for another SEMO Conference matchup, Poplar Bluff and Kennett. We haven't had Poplar Bluff on this year. We got them typically a couple times a year, but we'll have them Tuesday night. Poplar Bluff versus Kennett, and here Dominic Hardiman having a great season down there, junior for the Poplar Bluff Mules, and we'll see what happens down there with Poplar Bluff and Kennett. Tuesday night from the Kennett High School Gymnasium, 7:30 start as well there. Tuesday night, then Friday we'll have a big slate of games for the Stoddard County Activities Association final night. The final night of that tournament for both JV and varsity will be 4 games starting at 4 o'clock, 4, 5:30, 7, and 8:30 at the Bearcat Event Center. That'll lead off with the JV third place game at 4, followed by the varsity third place game at 5:30. Then wrapping up the night with the championship games, JV championship at 7, then the varsity title game with the nightcap at 8:30. So those 4 games we'll bring to you live from the Bearcat Event Center. That tournament gets underway Monday night. Monday night at the Bearcat Event Center all week in Dexter, and we'll bring you the final night of that county tournament, JV and varsity, 4 games next Friday night here on YHC. So that's the slate to look forward to this week. here on YHC. And speaking of that SCAA tournament, here's the varsity bracket. Dexter Bearcats with the top seed. They'll take on 8th Bell City in the first round. 4th Puxco versus 5th Bloomfield. 2nd Advance versus 7th Richland. 3rd Bernie versus 6th Woodland. That's the Stoddard County Activity Association tournament this week at the Bearcat Event Center in Dexter. That's the varsity tournament. Also have the JV tournament there as well. We don't have the bracket, but both those tournaments taking place at the Bearcat Event Center all this week. And now let's take a look at the updated state rankings for this week. We got quite a few of our area teams in the state rankings from the area. Taking a look at Class 1 and boys, Advance leading the way at number 1 as they have the last few weeks. They've had a great year, still on top at number 1, state runner-up in Class 1 last year, and leading pretty much been the number 1 team for much of the year in Class 1 this season. So Advance looking to make another run for that state title this year. North Andrew at number 2, down the way Dora, Jamestown, Winston, Eminence, Lakeland, Walnut Grove, St. Joseph Christian, and Medville rounding out the top 10 for Class 1. In Class 2, Sacred Heart at number 1, Mid Buchanan number 2, down the way Milan and the Oran Eagles. They're in the top 5 at number 4, the defending Class 2 state champions. 5 Fayette, 6 Thayer, 7 Eugene, 8 Hartville, 9 New Bloomfield, and 10 Harrisburg. And in Class 3, Cardinal Ritter out on top at number 1. 2 Whitfield, the Charleston Blue Jays move up to 3rd in the state. They're in the top 5. 4 Clark County, 5 Licking, Walnut Grove, Hallsville, Springfield Catholic, Saxony Lutheran moving into the top 10 this week at number 9. And 10, St. Paul Lutheran. Saxony Lutheran might head out of those state rankings this next week, taking a few losses this week to Kennett, and they lost last night to Notre Dame. So that Kennett loss will probably bump them out of that top 10 for this coming week. And in Class 4, Vashon at number 1, the defending champions in Class 4. Sikeston moved down a couple weeks back due to their loss to Charleston. So they're at number 2. 3, St. Mary's. 4, Cape Central, still there at the top 5. Only loss of the year coming to Sikeston earlier in the year in that Seymour Conference tournament. So Cape Central there in the mix as well in the top 5 at number 4. And number 5 is Hillsboro. 6, Grandview of Kansas City. 7, Parkway Central. Then Nevada, Confluence Prep, and Raytown South. And take a look at Class 5, Webster Groves, Lee Summit West, Hazelwood Central, Rockbridge, North Kansas City, Chaminade, Liberty, Oak Park, Fort Zumwalt South, and Glendale. No local Class 5 teams there in those state rankings. And take a look at the girls starting in Class 1, Walnut Grove, Southwest Livingston County, South Iron, a little out west there in the top 5 at number 3. Community, Madison, Norborn, Green City, Mound City, Leeton, and Jefferson. The top 10 for Class 1 girls. In Class 2, Skyline, Thayer out west there at number 2. Mid Buchanan, Blue Eye, Oran. The Oran Lady Eagles at number 5. The Neelyville Lady Tigers, they're right behind them at number 6. 7, Fordland, 8, Stanberry, 9, South Shelby, and 10, Santa Fe. And interesting there, Oran and Neelyville share the same district, I believe. Or they might not. I can't remember if they do or not, but they'll certainly likely meet up on the way to the state Final Four there with Oran and Neelyville. And in Class 3, Stratford at number 1, followed by Whitfield, Trenton, South Callaway, Clark County, Monroe, Licking, Fairgrove, Park Hill Central a bit north there at number 9, and 10, Boonville. And in Class 4, Incarnate Word at number 1, 2, Benton, 3, Lincoln Prep, 4, Parkway North, 5, Carl Junction, 6, the local Dexter Lady Bearcats, and they're at number 6, 7, Country Day, 8, St. Dominic, 9, Lutheran South, and 10, Sullivan. They're with the Class 4. And in Class 5, Kirkwood at number 1, followed by North Kansas City, Kickapoo, Lee Summit West, Jackson, falling down from, I think, number 2 to number 5 this week. 6, Rockbridge, 7, Branson, 8, Park Hill South, 9, Nixa, and 10, St. Joseph's. And those are the state rankings for this week for Missouri. And those don't reflect this week's games, which were very few for this week and this part of the state in southeast Missouri. And we're going to take one more break and start to wrap up the show, give you a little playoff preview for this weekend for the NFL. And we're going to take one last break and be back shortly. And welcome back and take a look at the NFL playoffs. Big games this weekend, Sunday afternoon. I believe the 2 o'clock game is the AFC Championship game with the New England Patriots. Going to be about I think they're might be around 7-8 point favorites in that game, taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Certainly the story going into that game, Tom Brady with an injured right hand. How injured that is, we'll see, but did miss some practice, I think, Thursday and even Friday. I think he may have missed that Friday practice as well, so we'll see what happens there. Very good defense with the Jaguars and a more capable offense out of the Jaguars this year. Certainly last week put up 42 points on the Pittsburgh Steelers, so we'll see what happens. But New England, it's hard to pick against them when they're at home, and a more inexperienced team. I haven't seen a lot of playoff success over the last, it's been quite a while. I think they haven't been in the playoffs since 2007, where in that year, that postseason, the New England Patriots took care of them pretty easily. So I would expect New England as big favorites to move on, but certainly a capable team in the Jaguars. That defense shows up, the offense able to put up some points. They very well could knock off the Patriots in that upset, but wouldn't be surprised if the defending Super Bowl champions are back in the Super Bowl for this year. So we'll see what happens in the AFC title game. On the NFC title game, certainly interesting matchup there. The number 1 seed Philadelphia Eagles with backup quarterback Nick Foles hosting the Minnesota Vikings, coming off that very improbable win against the New Orleans Saints with that last play, Case Keenum to Stephon Diggs with seconds to go with 60 yards to travel to get that touchdown. And hook or crook, they pulled it off, and they advanced to the NFC Championship. They'll be on the road taking on the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Eagles going to be home underdogs once again. They were home underdogs last week, and they defeated the Atlanta Falcons, the defending NFC champions, and back at home again this week, taking on the Minnesota Vikings, taking on Case Keenum and the Vikings. Very good defense in the Vikings. And pretty capable offense. Case Keenum's played very well even as a third-string quarterback. I think he's more of a pure backup quarterback, second string. But might get a nice contract for next year from Minnesota or from someone with the way he's played this year. So we'll see what happens there with backup quarterbacks in the NFC Championship game. Winner moving on to the Super Bowl 52 in a couple weeks. And it's going to be taking place in Minnesota at U.S. Bank Stadium, and that is the home of the Minnesota Vikings. So the Minnesota Vikings with a rare opportunity to host the Super Bowl. Wouldn't be a complete home field advantage, but pretty as close as you can get to it. Hosting the Super Bowl up in Minnesota in a couple weeks. Certainly a great opportunity for the Minnesota Vikings to host Super Bowl 52 on their home field in a couple of weeks. So we'll see what happens there. Going to be an interesting matchup there as well in that NFC Championship game. Very good defenses there with Philadelphia and Minnesota. Wouldn't be surprised for the low-scoring game with those offenses this weekend. So those are your conference championship matchups, and we'll see who will battle it out for Super Bowl 52 in Minnesota 2 weeks from tomorrow. So we'll see what happens this weekend. And that's pretty much going to wrap it up for us for today's roundtable. Still, we want to give you a heads up on the games that will be taking place this week. Monday night, Clarkton at Portageville, 7:30 start here on YHC Monday night. Tuesday, Poplar Bluff at Kennett. And Friday night, 4 games starting at 4 o'clock. The Stoddard County Activity Association final night. We'll bring all 4 of those games here on YHC and online at yhctv.com. So check those out all this week here on YHC. And that's going to do it for us today. And we appreciate you for tuning in as always. And we look forward to seeing you next week right here on another roundtable and all the games we're bringing to you this week. And until then, have yourself a great week. Take care, everyone.